So this is my Triumph Scrambler 1200 XE, and I'm going to do a bit of a walk around, show you the numerous accessories I've bought, and tell you everything you need to know about them. We'll start at the front of the bike with the high mudguard. It's very easy to fit yourself, you just have to screw in 3 bolts to the underside of the triple clamps, or double clamps or whatever they are, basically where the fender sits. I also chose to remove the entirety of the stock fender and suspension guards because I think it looks a lot cooler this way, but I wouldn't have done so if I was the muddy off-roading type. If you do that, you'll need 4 5mm bolt hole plugs to fill the holes at the front of the suspension bracket. I haven't ridden it in the rain with the high fender, but I'm told it doesn't do a very good job of stopping road spray, even if you have the plastic part of the stock mudguard. I find it does make a slightly funny noise, kind of a high-pitched hum, but I only notice it when I'm at low speeds and I've got my visor open. Next up is the headlight bezel and cage. Now I don't care about the added protection the cage gives, I just like shiny things. And I think the headlight bezel is a massively underrated accessory. Once you've seen it, you then can't unsee how cheap and horrible looking the stock bezel is. Now I fitted them both myself, which was a total and utter ball ache. There are various cables behind the headlight that you have to line up perfectly to slot the bezel in. It took me about 45 minutes, which sounds fine, but 43 of those minutes were spent trying to line the bastard up. So if you do it, make sure your garage is soundproof so your neighbours can't hear the inevitable colourful language. Next up is the amusingly named touring windscreen. First things first, I read the fitting instructions and it sounded as fiddly as the headlight bezel, so I got my dealer to fit it instead. It took them double the time the instructions said it should, so I think avoiding fitting it myself was a good move. As to the screen's performance, I think Triumph should be legally obliged to call it a touring screen, with touring in inverted commas. I'm 6'1" and it does make 70 miles an hour marginally more comfortable, but it doesn't make the bike feel any less of a naked adventure bike to me. And if I were to buy it again, I'd get the shorter smoked out screen, which looks a lot better and probably achieves a similar result with regard to wind protection. There are bigger options on the aftermarket. The Dark Marlin doesn't look too bad, and the even bigger Givi A660 is just about bearable to look at, unless you're a poser like I am. Next we have the Tech Bike Parts bar end mirrors. To me these make a huge difference to the look of the bike and make it look much more of a badass off-roader. But there are compromises. While you see less elbow in these than you do in the stock mirrors, the glass is smaller and is not convex, so they're a little less practical, and they do make the bike a couple of inches wider. Now the handlebars on the XE are so wide already that I almost went for the XC when I bought it. So if you value filtering, forget about the bar end mirrors. Really though, visibility is fine, and I don't find they vibrate much. They're also about half a kilo lighter than the stock mirrors, which should shave a good 100th of a second off my commute to work. And they're dead easy to fit, following the video instructions Tech Bike Parts did. Next is the Triumph handlebar brace, which is the single most useless accessory in the history of motorcycles. Having said that, it makes the handlebars look dead straight, which I think adds to the Mad Max dirt bike look. You know, if Mad Max were a middle-class middle-aged man from Surrey. And unsurprisingly, it is easy peasy to fit. I also have a quad lock phone mount, which I personally find brilliant for holding my phone while I look at Google Maps, but I've heard plenty of people say it vibrates your phone so much that it breaks the camera. When I touch the phone at high speeds, I can feel it buzzing like a BMW S1000 XR, so I can well imagine that it's not too gentle on your mobile phone's innards. Moving back, and we have the Evotech Rad Guard. Evotech describes this one as a silver radiator guard, which it is not. And annoyingly, the only part of it that is silver, the brackets, is a slightly different colour silver to the main aluminium parts on the bike, which messes with my OCD something fierce. So if I were you, I'd either go for the black one, or open your wallet a bit wider and get the official Triumph one. It is much bigger than the stock guard though, and it has side protection, which the stocker doesn't. And of course it's a cinch to fit. In fact, it would score a rating of 1 on the Revzilla beard scale of difficulty. Moving down, we have the Triumph engine guards. Now these do stick out past the engine and foot pegs, so they will protect your bike in the event of an unscheduled dismount, which is not unlikely given this is a tall and slightly chunky old girl. But guess what? They also look cool, which is why they're here on my bike. Now I'm told you need a very strong torque wrench to fit it, so it's one for the dealer as far as I'm concerned. You can also get exhaust header guards on the aftermarket, but I personally don't like the look of them. Up next is of course more bling, with the Triumph headbolt covers. The stock headbolts look horrible to me, so if you've got 40 quid to spare, you can buy them shiny little hats that say Triumph Motorcycles on top. Arguably a waste of money, but I bet you'll start noticing those ugly head bolts now you've seen this. And now we have the pièce de résistance, as the French would say, the Zard silencer, which is to silence what my screen is to touring. The eagle-eyed among you will have noticed the saucy little link pipe at the front too. Now that alone is worth getting, if only to take the excess heat away from your leg in the summer. But I also found it smoothed out the throttle response. I used to stall quite easily because the engine is so lean low down, but not anymore. I installed the entire exhaust myself, which was a mistake. It was very fiddly and I found it impossible to line up perfectly. So in my opinion, it's a job for a man with more spanners and more patience than I. Now I did weigh all the parts before I fitted it, and from memory it's about 4 kilograms lighter than the stock system, although I can't honestly say the bike feels any lighter as a result. But more importantly, and as a rather handsome man will now demonstrate, it does sound more than a little fruity. Now when Zard sent me this, they forgot to include the baffles, and I can personally assure you, you do not want to ride this bike without the baffles. It is deafeningly loud, and not in a nice way. I've never felt so self-conscious riding a bike, and my last bike was a Monster 1200 with a Decat D-baffle Terminioni. The Zard without baffles though is twice as loud as that, and I also found having no baffles ruined the fueling. And as if that's not enough, it also melted my right hand side indicator. Once I received the baffles and put them in though, all was well, and the indicator has suffered no further melting, despite being closer to the pipes thanks to a tail tidy. Before I get to the tail tidy though, we have the rear rack with the rather unattractive Oxford 35 tail pack. I had intended to get a proper aluminium top box, but it turns out they weigh 5 kilograms and the rack is only rated to take 2 kilograms. However, my missus likes the grab rail and it's a useful space for a pint of milk or whatever, and fitting was easy enough, although it is easy to scratch the nice rear aluminium mudguard when you're removing the stock handrails, so do be careful. Next up is the aforementioned Tech Tail Tidy. It does what it says on the tin, so there's not really much to say here. Fitting is made easy by the excellent instructional video Tech did, but do beware that you have to saw part of the stock plastic piece that sits under the fender. It looks okay with the stock blinkers, but really this is a classic example of accessory knock-on effect, and you'll find yourself wanting the LED blinkers and relocation kit, which will set you back another £400. And finally we have the Triumph pannier bag. Now the bracket is easy to fit, but if you also have the tail tidy, you'll find the bag sits closely to the blinker, which makes attachment a little bit awkward. And while it's a good sized bag, it did fall off my bike once. It was empty at the time, so I presume I just didn't click it into place properly. There is a locking mechanism on the inside of the bag if you unvelcro the inner layer, so I'd recommend you use that whenever you carry anything in the bag. And those are all the accessories I've got. If you've got any questions, chuck them down below, and if you enjoy the video, give it a thumbs up.